CEDAW, the International Bill of Rights for Women.
Okay, hello, I'm Jonna Monaghan. I'm director of Women's Platform. We act as the link between the women's sector in Northern Ireland and the international level.
Reflecting back, explain the CEDAW process in Northern Ireland and what its impact has been.
Okay, so first off, just to explain what CEDAW is, it stands for the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. It's one of the UN International Human Rights Treaties, which means that it's a binding obligation on UN member states to act on the provisions in that. CEDAW sets out how basically to progress women's rights and gender equality. And the UK is a state party to CEDAW, so that means that the UN will check every so many years what has the UK actually done and then provide recommendations on how to make things better for women and girls. The role of Women's Platform in Northern Ireland is to coordinate the women's sector response to that, which basically is a shadow to what the UK government says. And then there's a process that it's actually almost like a court process in Geneva when that's examined. And civil society evidence is actually really important because it kind of adds a different layer to what the government is saying. You can clarify, you can fill in gaps, and the UN committee that looks at that finds that really valuable because they would of course not be experts on everything in every UN member state. And in terms of the work of civil society in Northern Ireland, working together across the sector, we've actually managed to get really strong recommendations for Northern Ireland. So in the current concluding observations, which are from 2019, there's a focus on affordable and accessible childcare, implementation of abortion legislation, and increasing women's participation in decision making. These processes happen every so many years. So in a previous one in 2013, the mother and baby institutions were highlighted, and there was a very strong recommendation that they should have been in the historical institutional abuse inquiry, and that actually is what sparked the inquiry that's currently being prepared.
How can women or women's groups engage with Women's Platform?
So we try and do capacity building on all the international human rights treaties, in particular CEDAW, and we're very, very happy to come out to women's groups, talk about these, and see how we can support women to use them in their own advocacy and just be aware of what those rights are. We do webinars as well, sharing learning from other countries, from other networks. So all that information will be on our website. We have a mailing list. People can sign up through there. In terms of the CEDAW process, we go out to women's groups and look for evidence. How has your life been over the last 4 years? What do you think needs to change? And then we put that together, working with all the other women's sector organizations, taking their evidence on what is their perspective on how things have been over the last number of years, and we submit that to CEDAW. So that is something that we're going to start in 2025. There are at the minute huge delays at the UN, largely because they're running out of cash. So the examination should have been about now, but we're now looking at 2026. So over the next year, we will be getting in touch with a lot of women's groups.
Looking forward, what is needed next in terms of women's human rights in Northern Ireland?
The really big thing is that we get a focus on gender equality and women's rights in policy making. At the minute, it's quite obviously not a very strong priority. And the way to do that is we do need a gender equality strategy that provides the framework for that. It's very positive that we now have the Ending Violence Against Women and Girls strategy, but that's only one part of equality. There are many others. And one other area that's absolutely crucial is that we need, and women are telling us this consistently, that we need mechanisms to make sure that women's voices are heard. Women feel that they aren't heard, their needs are being sidelined. So that's something we're looking at what are the mechanisms that actually you can be involved in policy making, in decision making, and how can that actually be taken better into account. A women's platform acts as the secretariat for one of the all party groups in the assembly, which looks at women, peace, and security, and that has started that process. But we need actually formal structures for that as well.